Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Elden Ring. I played on the PS5, it's also available on the PS4, Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PC. So let's get into the story. You play as a Tarnished, and you create your own character like you do in pretty much any From Software game. And you are drawn back to the Land Between. Why are you brought back? Well, because it's your quest to reassemble the Elden Ring. And for me, I've always said this about pretty much all of these games, is that they are really based around the gameplay, less about the story, and I know that From Software is really big into super deep lore, and quite frankly, that is fully present in Elden Ring, and it is one of the things that I think makes Elden Ring more accessible than a Dark Souls or, Bloodborne game. Because there are cutscenes and there are people who come up to you and actually explain some of the lore to you. Not all of it, but they give you lore, whereas in, other From Software games, you have to go digging for that shit. That being said, it's fine. I enjoy the lore, I always have, but I also don't go digging too deep, so I do like Elden Ring because they hand you more lore. Let's get into the audio, and the first thing I'm going to say is the voiceover work is perfectly serviceable. It's not like mind-shatteringly amazing. There are several characters where it's just totally fine, but you also don't feel like the voice actor was necessarily of the highest quality or maybe not giving it their all. But again, also, it was not like that voiceover work where you're just like, oh god, make it stop. As for the music, I love the music in this game. Honestly, I think From Software games generally have great music, so that continues on in Elden Ring. And the sound effects, I think the sound effects are very well done. They have to do a lot more with them in my opinion because it is an open world game, and I think they do a good job with that. Now let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and the first thing I want to say is this is still a From Software game. This is still a Souls-like or Soulsborne, however you want to say it. This game is still going to kick your dick inside of you. I know there have been a bunch of articles and stuff saying, oh, it's the most accessible one, and in some ways it is, but that does not change the difficulty of this game. Now that being said, it is a third-person action RPG designed to kick your dick back inside of you, like I said earlier. That's what these games are. They are meant to be challenging. That is what the core experience is in these games. It's not necessarily about delivering a story, it's about having a fun and challenging game, but it has to be tough but fair. Now that being said, at first when I went into this, I believed all that bullshit that I had been reading and hearing about the accessibility and how this was an easier version. It's not. The first area you start in, yeah, it's not so bad. You fight a mid-boss, which you don't realize is a mid-boss at the time, and I was legitimately stunned at how easily I beat this guy when they bothered to put a health bar for him on the bottom of my screen. But you best believe, once I got out of there and I ran into I don't remember what his name is exactly, but like Tree Sentinel, man, he fucked me into oblivion. And it was not consensual. So it very quickly reintroduced what I was dealing with. But because this is an open world game, I was able to go around him and continue on with the game. Now, you can't do that everywhere because there are plenty of bosses that, well, they're real bosses and they're story-based bosses, so you will need to fight them. But it's just kind of interesting playing a Dark Souls game, because this really is much more similar to Dark Souls than I would say Bloodborne or Sekiro, but it is in an open world environment. So you can really explore in a very non-linear manner, and I think that is actually really cool. And at first I was like, I don't know how to process this. But once I got the hang of it and I started exploring and finding other encampments of enemies and all sorts of stuff like that, I actually had a really good time. Now when I say open world and I say enemy encampment, I don't mean it functions like a Far Cry. You're not going in and capturing bases and stuff like that. At the end of the day, your goal is to explore, find new items, explore the lore of the world, and eventually progress through the story as it is. There are plenty of bosses, there are a good variety of enemies, and like any good Soulsborne, you can really play it very much your own way. There are a bunch of different classes you can choose from. I went with Samurai because I wanted to focus more on, combat, and that is how I've generally played these kind of games. But just like any of these other games, it is methodical. You have to be precise with what you are doing. If you're in the middle of a swing and you decide, oh shit, I need to dodge, well, you're fucked. If you dodged once and you meant to dodge twice, yeah, it's going to bite you on the ass. So you have to really think through what you're doing. You have to play intelligently, just like any other Soulsborne. And that is the thing I really want to nail home, because there's so much media about this game that isn't treating it like a Soulsborne. It is. It is a From Software Soulsborne game. I do have one complaint with like the auto-targeting in the game. It doesn't work as well as I would like. I'll lock onto a guy, I'll kill him, I can still sort of see the other guy, and he's closer than somebody else, but the auto-target will lock onto whoever's in front of me, not the next closest threat, and I've never liked that. I don't like it in this game, I think it's a pain in my ass. And it puts you in danger in a game that you're already in fairly constant danger, because you could go through the same encounter a dozen times and have it play out differently all dozen times. But that being said, I do love the challenge, I do love the grind of this game. No, I did not beat this game, I will be honest with you there. A, it's a huge freaking game. B, it's a really hard game. I didn't have the time to get through it. Now let's get into the controls, and I think the controls are good. I really never had any complaints with the responsiveness of the controls, or how they functioned, or how they were mapped out. I think the controls are good. The only time I have any complaints, and it's less with the controls and more with just like a function in the game. As we all know, there are the blood stains on the floor and the messages where you can see how somebody died previously, or you can read a message. Unfortunately, those use buttons that you also may need in combat. Like if you are trying to pick up your previous souls and you need to hit triangle, but it's on top of a blood spatter, well, you might trigger the blood spatter instead of picking up your previous souls. And using the left and right to switch between messages to read when you're trying to actually switch weapons, it gets to be a pain. So that's something they do need to sort out, in my opinion. Now let's get into the graphics and visuals. And the first thing I'm going to say is, it's a beautiful game. It really is. Graphically, it is a very good looking game. That being said, this doesn't necessarily feel like a next-gen game. And I have heard reports of it visually running more poorly on the PS5 than on the PS4, which that's ridiculous. That shouldn't be happening. And I will admit, I did experience some visual issues, specifically losing some frames here and there, and that's honestly unacceptable because I was playing in performance mode, not quality mode. I did switch between the two, and I really didn't notice a difference. Quality mode did not make it look more beautiful or any cleaner, and performance mode didn't make it run any more smoothly, so that's fucked up. But what I do love is the visual style of this game. Yes, they're trying for this, not exactly realism, but a lot of detail and things that look very believable in this world. And the graphical fidelity and detail do bring that to life very well. But what I've always loved with From Software is the designs they bring to the world. The way your characters look, the way the different classes look, the way the world itself looks. But beyond that, the enemies and how they move about the world and how they fight and just all those little visual things are there. All those things From Software has always brought to their games. It's still there in Elden Ring. It's just in a much larger open world for a change. But everything is big and over the top like it is in any of those games, and the designs of some of the enemies is truly grotesque and horrifying, and it works. If they're not grotesque, they're incredibly intimidating. I just think they've always done a great job with their creature design as well as their just general character design, whether they're friendly or not. It always fits well in the world. They always have great lore to go along with it. So visually, it is a beautiful game. So to wrap this up, yes, this game has issues. I don't think this is a perfect game. All this 10 out of 10 shit, I don't agree with. Is this the most accessible From Software game? I will say so, because there is some tutorialization, so you're not just thrown into the deep end immediately. There are some like guiding marks that will lead you to where you're going to go in a pretty vague way, and the lore is handed to you in a story way, rather than you having to go digging for it. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, this is still a From Software Soulsborne game. It will kick your ass. But it does have a few things that I feel hold the overall experience back just a bit, which is not to say it is not still a great game. But I do disagree with people calling it perfect, because that's such a subjective thing. Like me, I do enjoy these games. I've always enjoyed these games, but a perfect game is something that will drive me all the way through, whereas this is definitely going to be a game I'm going to come back to on a pretty regular basis, but it's not something that I feel fully driven to beat. I feel ashamed to have never completed. I just occasionally go in and enjoy that challenge. So yes, I do recommend this if you are a fan of From Software games. If you enjoy a Soulsborne game, you enjoy an incredibly challenging game, you will enjoy this just like you've probably enjoyed Dark Souls or Bloodborne. But if you're not a fan of that style of game, this is not the game that's going to turn you on to it. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, are you a fan of Soulsborne style games? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.